Okay, lots to cover this afternoon, as always. So I'll probably be upping the pace a little bit. If it's going too fast, you can tell me, and I'll slow down. Also, it'll be recorded, so if you do miss a few things, you can just watch the YouTube link later on. So uh, we talked about CRM last couple of weeks actually, and I wanted just to finish off these few slides, then move on to the services marketing mix and a couple of other things as well. So we know very much about this kind of services triangle: the company, the employees, the customers. I don't think um, I think that might have been the last slide I finished on last week. So we don't really need any more on that. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with that. Most of what I cover, you can follow up on the textbook as well, to kind of do the background reading. And always keep an eye on those service gaps. That kind of service gaps model is the sort of framework for the module. So we talk about service recovery, and there's the well-known saying, isn't there, that if somebody complains or has a bad experience, if you resolve that problem, they will be even more loyal to you than they would have been in the in the first instance. So that's always worth remembering. Okay, so I guess what CRM is also about, this idea of this kind of 360-degree view of the customer. Remember, we talked about that last week. And this is also about understanding, if, for example, the guest had stayed at the Sheraton, had a problem with the service, then if they're staying maybe in a couple of weeks' time at the Ritz Carlton, you make a proactive apology. You acknowledge that they've had a bad experience, that obviously you're going to make sure they have a fantastic experience this time round. So that's the benefit of CRM technology. And it's worth saying that in many cases, if you think about hotel chains like Accor, Hilton, pretty much all of them, Marriott, they have multiple brands, like sub brands underneath the parent brand. And the idea is that the technology will go across those brands. So if you're staying at a 2-star brand, or then you stay at a 3-star or 4-star, maybe you're traveling on business, and then you travel with your family on leisure. The idea is that you still have that whole view of the customer, and you can personalize the experience. You can make personalized offers, so on and so forth. So that's why CRM technology is really important. And of course, AI is now revolutionizing that technology, because AI obviously can help to automate things. It can work with large data sets. It can look for patterns. You know, it links in with other technology for doing outbound marketing campaigns, for example, email marketing, right? So if you have email marketing software and it's connected to your CRM software, then, or it's part of that whole suite of CRM technology, then you've got that integration, which is really important, because then you can personalize, but you can also personalize your communications to the guest, right? You know that they have a particular hobby they like, or their interests based on their behavior, because people's past behavior is the best indicator of their future behavior. Okay, that's always worth remembering. Yeah. So yeah, just beyond the stay, this kind of idea that we're talking here about share of wallet. Okay, so increasingly, what you find with in the hotel industry is that the loyalty programs are now creating partnerships with non-hotel partners. Could be theaters, could be restaurants, could be retail, could be experience companies, agencies that run experiences, activities, whatever. Okay, and there's a business model. There's a kind of revenue share there, between the various actors in the ecosystem. So it's always, I think, worth thinking about that kind of ecosystem metaphor. You've got maybe the central company, like the hotel, but who does it partner with? Who does it collaborate with? Who does it co-create with to enhance the service to the customer? And so that's something that it's not too difficult to map out. You could even play a little bit with AI for that. use Gemini or Perplexity or ChatGPT or one of the AI large language models, give them a web brand, a link, and say, I'm interested in looking at who this company links and partners with. It'll obviously go through the website, maybe through all the various other digital assets like the blog or social media, and maybe highlight who its partners are in the mix. Okay, so always think a little bit about the service organization that you're studying is part of a wider ecosystem. By the way, that includes the university. I'm doing some research at the moment. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting yesterday with somebody quite senior at Hampshire County Council, and another chap who works up at the University of Southampton Science Park. And we're looking at this concept of the AI ecosystem. And they have a thing called the AI Growth Alliance, which is basically trying to look at Southampton as the city, but the whole region surrounding it. How can we create a kind of sharing ecosystem comprising multiple actors, right? And we're looking at actors across 4 sectors, which is university, obviously includes here, local government, which would be the council, right? Hampshire Council. What are the other 2? Business, which would be anything from small startups, SMEs to larger companies. And the final one is what we call civic society, right? And that's basically often non-profit, non-commercial interests. Could be charities, not-for-profits, social enterprises, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking at an ecosystem comprising those 4 sectors and how we can better join them up. In fact, how could we use AI to map what organizations in each of those 4 sectors are doing with AI? So we're kind of using AI to map AI, if that makes sense. And the idea behind that is to identify, collaboration, co-creation opportunities to enhance things like employability, economic performance, but also social benefits. Yeah, so we shouldn't forget the social environmental benefits. I know Karen's very hot on that with her sustainable development goals, and rightly so. We can't always just think about the bottom line commercial growth. We have to think about the wider cost benefit situation and with society and so on. Anyway, I don't want to digress too much. I just thought I'd share with you something I'm doing kind of in my own sort of research time. Which is very interesting and I think related to this. So, this talks about this concept of strategic personalization. So it's just about this idea of customer recognition, right? So that that one of your high value guests, and it's worth also saying that in a CRM system, you would flag those high value guests, frequent business travelers typically would be there. So, this person's maybe visiting Germany. We know that they're a foodie, right? They love the local food, adventurous with what they eat, and so on and so forth. So we push notifications for experiences, not just room upgrades, right? So we're kind of trying to recognize the various profile of the customer. It's not just about offering them a better room, which may or may not be available anyway, and that comes at a cost to the hotel. But if we know something about their other behaviors, we can personalize. Okay. So if we offer, let's say this concept of experiences could be like a theater package or a restaurant package or a cultural tour or I don't know, a wine tasting experience, right? Those things typically increase your retention rate, right? Because that's what we're all about with CRM. It's about retention, right? We know that there's customers we acquire, but we want to retain. CRM is about not just acquisition, but about retention. Okay, and you can see here the stats. I don't need to read those I don't need to read those out to you. No, there's a short little video here, which I think I'll play. It might just play through my laptop speakers because sometimes when you connect through HDMI, it doesn't automatically pick up the speakers in the room, and it'll take me like 10 minutes to figure that out. So I'll probably just play it through the speakers in the laptop, and the recording should pick this up, but I can give you the link anyway. So basically, this is just a short little video which shows Delta Airlines, one of their CRM executives, talking about how they kind of optimize their CRM program for their passengers. Okay, so let's just come across here. So that's all recording by the looks of it. Just pop in the link here.
This records conversations better than taking notes ever could. This is Pocket, an AI note taker that records.
They're sitting in their seat for on average 2 to 3 hours on a flight, and they want to be entertained.
Nearly 200 million people fly with Delta Airlines every year. More than half of them are part of Delta's SkyMiles loyalty program, which presents an opportunity to offer them something special.
The first-party data that we have on our customers is plentiful. And what we have been doing is bringing all of that customer data collectively together so that we can better access it and better deliver more contextual, personalized experiences for our customers.
Sarah Downs, Delta's Director of Engagement and Optimization, says partnering with technologies like LiveRamp to activate customer data helps them make the journey part of the joy. Two important touch points are the free Wi-Fi program and Delta Sync screens.
It has features like a continue watching button so that you can pick up on that movie that you couldn't watch on your last flight. You can actually curate your own titles and movies and TV series. And we also have really helpful flight information for customers when they log in, like their connecting times and their connecting gates.
Delta knew they could create next-level customer experiences by going beyond their own first-party data and developing data collaboration partnerships. Delta and its collaboration partners, Paramount Plus and YouTube for in-flight entertainment, and T-Mobile for Wi-Fi, are serving up innovative experiences that deliver real value.
We work with these partners to deliver on how can we make sure that the customer feels like we're delivering them additional value as a SkyMiles member, and not just putting a clutter of offers and ads and experiences in front of them. It's more than a click-through rate, right? We want to create satisfaction.
It's such a great example of putting the consumer experience first and tapping into the collaborative network for the insights and partnerships to make that experience the best it can be.
If you've got really strong first-party data and you can find a partner that has really relevant customer attributes that can enrich what you have, you start to bring those things together. That is where you see a little bit of the magic happen in being able to deliver an experience together that strengthens the value proposition for the customer.
Okay, so quite a few things that she said there in terms of kind of keywords that relate to marketing and what we're teaching in the course. But I think the takeaway, the highlights that I would highlight for you from that very short video is the partnership and collaboration that Delta Airlines engages with, like T-Mobile. She mentioned YouTube and others, and so it's kind of coming together because obviously an airline has to focus on its core delivery, which is obviously getting you from A to B, but also all of the other things that come with a very great flight experience. But they're not in the media business, they're not in the Wi-Fi business, they're not in telecommunications. So they have to partner with appropriate partners that they can work with. She mentioned first-party data. What that means is basically data that the customer gives you permission to have. Right? In other words, it's data you've got directly from the customer. It's not when you go to a website I'm sure you've all seen this, and it asks you whether you will accept or reject the cookies, right? That's what's called third-party data, okay? And first-party data, which is what CRM is all about, is about having that relationship with a customer whereby you can use direct behavioral data from the customer. What movies did they watch? What drinks did they have on the flight? There's so many things. You think about it, when the customer is sitting on a plane for 10, 11 hours, if it's a long haul flight, then they are a captive customer. That doesn't mean you have to bombard them with sales messages or, start spying on them and, finding out things about them you shouldn't be using. That's absolutely not allowed. But it does provide you a real opportunity to, as she said, enrich the experience. And she said it's not about click-throughs, right? I thought it was quite an interesting comment because, you have this thing called clickbait where you put something on to try and get people to click. It's not about that. This is about satisfaction. This is about long-term loyalty. So we have to consider what might be some of the metrics that we would use to measure our marketing. And that's something we'll start to come on. We'll discuss a little bit more today and next week. But certainly if you just think about that video, some of the things she said already, you can think about how you might measure that. Obviously, satisfaction level, is the partnership working? If you've had meetings with T-Mobile, with YouTube, with whoever else she mentioned there, Paramount or whoever it was, what are you coming together for? What package are you offering the customer? Is that landing with the customer? Is that actually adding value to their experience? And she mentioned the value proposition, didn't she? The value proposition, right? Do you know what I mean by the value proposition? If somebody like me, for example, here right now was to ask you to give a very short sentence or just what you think the value proposition is, what would you say? First thing that comes into your mind. Don't overthink it. We've talked about that, I think, a couple of weeks now. Maybe Karen's touched on it. You've heard the value proposition canvas, haven't you? Right? What is a value proposition and why is it important? What's the purpose of it? Anything like that? Anything about it? Any ideas? I don't know, let's just fire up a website here, and literally the first thing that comes into my mind, because I was riding my bike today, so I'm going to put in can't even spell, Cannondale mountain bike. How about that? See if I can get the website. There we go, third-party data. Agree and proceed, okay? Third-party data means they can see, what I'm clicking, and they can serve me ads after I leave the website. So what's going to happen now? Next time I search on Google, I'm going to see ads for Cannondale. That's third-party data. Anyway, looking at this, just without even scrolling, what's the value proposition here from Cannondale selling mountain bikes? What do you think it is? What are they trying to communicate to you here? Who's their customer? What are they saying to them? What do they want them to do? What's the proposition here, guys? Just, don't worry. You don't have to stare at the screen too long. Just something that comes into your mind. Literally, just give me keywords that come into your mind that are related to marketing. That's it. Let's start with a little simple starting point.
I think, for example, when a customer visits the website, I think we want to bring the view of advantage things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, doesn't matter whether you are to go to very top area, the mall is still your preference?
Okay, so right, so one of the propositions I think is what you're saying, and you're absolutely right, is the technical excellence of the bikes, right? Because it looks like from what you're looking like at here, this is a little bit more extreme, isn't it? This is not just cycling along Southampton Park or something. These are guys going into the slightly challenging um, landscapes, and so it is about technical excellence, right? But what else are they selling? Cannondale on this. If you look at this, they're appealing to people at a functional level. If you buy a Cannondale bike, it will not fall apart when you cycle through very tough terrain. But what else are they selling? It's not just about the functional excellence. What else are Cannondale selling here? The emotions. Thank you. You came from the same area, so I wasn't sure. So yeah, they're selling emotions, right? What kind of emotions do you think are they appealing to here? Great, yeah, that's an interesting one. I hadn't thought of that, and that's an excellent idea. It's about achievement. It's about saying, because a lot of these, people riding bikes like this will probably be setting goals. How fast can I get up the mountain? All of that. So, they're probably quite competitive people. So it's also about achievement. That's a great idea. What else from around the room? What other things come off the screen to you here? You may not be a mountain bike person. It doesn't matter. You're a marketeer. Let's imagine you're a marketeer, a marketing consultant for Cannondale Bikes, and they've asked you to kind of give them a sort of critique on their main page, home site. What else does this image say to you? Freedom. Yeah, yes, were you saying the same thing? I'm getting an echo in the room, that's great. Right, great, freedom. Why do you say freedom? You're right, by the way, but yeah, just give me another couple of words. What is it about? What is it about freedom? Oh, sorry, I was looking. Yeah, no, it's okay. She's just 2 rows behind you.
Exploring different map, like the different parts of work. So
Yeah, it's about exploration, right? Yeah, yeah. And it's also freedom of just kind of like, freedom of just being out, riding fast, the fresh air. And it's about health and fitness as well, isn't it? Right? It's about well-being and health and fitness. Okay. Maybe it's about social interaction, right? These two guys are riding together. They're probably good friends. They're out for a day's riding. That's a social thing. So you see what's going on here. The value proposition is complex. It's not just the functional excellence of the bike, it's what the bike represents. That's the service they're selling. We're talking about services marketing here in this course. They're marketing a service. It looks like they're only marketing a product, a bike, but they're not. They're marketing a service that goes with the bike. And we will talk about service dominant logic, a theory of services marketing, probably next week in reality. And the authors behind service dominant logic say that essentially every product is actually a service. That's why they call it service dominant logic, not goods dominant logic, but service dominant. Dominant means it's kind of the more important, right? It's the more important logic. And why do they say that? Well, I think this is a great example, actually, that while the bike here is a tangible thing, right? No doubt about it. Actually, it's how that guy gets a service from owning that bike, right? And if you only think you're selling a bike, you're missing the opportunity, because you've got to get inside his mind and his shoes and put yourself in his position. And ideally, Cannondale will employ people who understand cycling, right? That's important. So the employees at Cannondale will know exactly what that feels like to be on a bike like that. That bike could be £2,000. Cannondale sell bikes even much more expensive than that. They sell them for a few £100. Obviously, different price ranges according to your ability and what how much money you have. So, but anyway, I don't want to labor the point. But when the lady in the video at Delta talked about the value proposition, I definitely want you guys to think about every service you consume through the day, every product you buy, not every single time, but think about what's the value proposition here. How can we understand how the product and the service translate into, what am I going to say, features that enable the customer to get the job done? If you look at the value proposition canvas, that's exactly what it says. What jobs is the customer trying to get done? And you're offering them a solution. The job that these guys are trying to get done is fun, freedom, achievement. What was your one? Freedom. Yours was freedom. Yeah, I've forgotten. Technical excellence of the bike. I could go on. Getting fit, staying healthy. That's a big trend now, isn't it? For people of all ages, actually. And Cannondale, if they're selling bikes to older people, they know they want to stay fit in their 50s, their 60s, even their 70s, out riding bikes. They might actually go to electric bikes. That's a big trend. Particularly older folk are, because they still want to be able to enjoy, mountain biking, off-roading, but maybe they haven't got the fitness that they had before to take a manual bike up a steep hill. So what are they doing? They're getting electric bikes. So they can still get out and enjoy you're with me here. And talking of marketing, what do we call this? I used the expression last week, I think. In marketing, there's a 3-letter acronym. What's happening here with this pop-up? What's that called in marketing terms? It's called call to action, CTA. Yeah, remember now? So remember that, okay? Marketeers talk about CTAs. What's your CTA? What's your call to action? Here's a little call to action here. They want me to sign up for new stuff and special offers. What they really want is to start to engage me in the relationship, the customer journey. Do you remember last week over there, I drew the funnel? Remember? And then this is trying to get me into the funnel. I've come to Cannondale. Obviously, they don't know I'm giving a lecture on services marketing, but I've gone to cannondale.com, right? I've accepted the cookies. So it means they will follow me. Next time I'm searching, I'll keep an eye. I'm sure I'll see an ad for Cannondale. Might even be on YouTube, because it's the Google ecosystem, isn't it? It's not just google.com or google.co.uk, right? So because I accepted the cookies, I'll get reminders, which is another way of keeping me in the funnel. But that's okay. The difference here is this is first-party data, like what the lady was talking about in the video. If I give my email here, I am giving them permission to send me information. However, while I may be giving them permission, very good practice is for them to send me an email and confirming that I'm giving them permission, right? It's called a double opt-in, right? So with data protection and privacy, we have to be super careful that we don't assume that somebody wants to hear from you. All right, everybody good on this? Okay, any questions? So I think really what I'd like you to start thinking about when you go to websites, when you go to a coffee shop, when you go to IKEA in West Key, just go to the shopping mall or wherever you go, online or in person, and it's in a service setting, and particularly if you're buying something, think, reflect, what's happening here? What have I learned from Karen and Philip about services marketing that's happening right now? How might I improve this? Both website, social media, in-person experience, what could be done better? That's what you need to start thinking like marketing people. And that's becomes like a habit if you do that. Okay, so I think I'm near the end of this one. Let's see what I've got left. So we talked about the Delta example. Yeah, so we know this. So basically, CRM is about relationships, but like she was saying, the Delta lady about that. It's also omni-channel. So we want to try and get an integrated view of what our loyal customers spend at different partners' touch points. The more we can get a view of that, the more we can get this 360-degree view of their behavior, and we can personalize and keep them loyal. We do need to be aware of privacy. I think I've just been more or less talking about that. How do you get the balance between great service and creepy surveillance? Right? Nobody wants to be the victim of surveillance. Okay, that's like people spying on you or kind of knowing about your behavior. This is in the news all the time now, isn't it? With the social media companies, and what responsibility do they have to us as citizens? Right, that's a huge, big ethical debate we could have for a long time. I don't know if you follow the media closely, but it's really in the news a lot, particularly around kids and their consumption of social media and content they're being given that maybe they shouldn't be given. So we need to personalize, and we need to kind of respond, but we don't want to be overstepping the line where we're kind of almost spying on our customers. So in other words, from the tech point of view, while technology helps you to scale and support CRM, it doesn't replace hospitality. It's still about that, as you can see here, that nice smile, that good service, warm, friendly interaction, eye contact with your guests, with your customers. That cannot be replaced by technology. So it's still a human endeavor. And I think that's quite reassuring, because we talk about AI as taking over everything and replacing jobs. And where does that leave the human race? Where does that leave us? Like, of AI. I'm a big advocate of AI. I'm researching it. I like it. I think it's very, very, it can, generate great innovations. I don't want AI to take over completely. I don't know what you think. You're probably on a similar, you probably agree, but we're all on a different level with that. So, okay, let me just mute the projector for a second while I find my next presentation, which is just right next door, I think. Here we go. So again, you will find all of these presentations in Blackboard. Okay, and I'm a little bit catching up, so I just want to motor on a wee bit, and I might actually. Where are we now? Oh, making good time. It's 1:30. So I'll probably go through this slide deck up until the break at 2 o'clock, and then we'll have a 10-minute break, as we always do, and then I'll cover a couple of extra things as well. Sorry, this is that's not a very good idea starting at the end, is it? Okay, so all right, so you'll find this in one of the weeks. I can't remember. I've moved them around, but if it's not this week, it'll be the week before. So it's basically the same presentation stretching over 2 weeks, effectively. Okay, so we're talking here then about the services marketing mix, right? So just to kind of think about this idea that you're kind of conducting an orchestra, you're conducting your marketing mix to to acquire and retain the customer. So we think about product, right? We're focusing on the experience. We're focusing on that, remember, unique value proposition. We looked at the Cannondale bikes a moment ago, right? And that proposition is often intangible and perishable. So if we were to compare the hotel to Cannondale bikes, which one is perishable and why? So we've got Hilton Hotels. You're the marketing director for Hilton Hotels. You're the marketing director for Cannondale bikes. Which of you is marketing a perishable product? Is it Hilton or is it Cannondale? Which one is perishable? Which one? I can't hear. The hotel. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. And obviously for the recording, I need to make sure, right? And why is it the hotel and not Cannondale Bikes?
Okay, for the Canadian wine, you can see it. You can have the wine.
Yeah.
Then for the hotel, it's just the experience.
Okay.
And then you need to come, and then it's something you can't touch it.
Yeah. No, that's a good starting. Let's see if anybody else add to that. What unique challenge does the Hilton Hotel's marketing team have when it comes to perishability that the Cannondale marketing team does not have? Why does, in a way, the Hilton marketing team have even a bigger challenge because of perishability than the Cannondale marketing team? I mean, you're right. There is the thing about being able to touch it, see it, bring it back, but what else? At a very kind of economic level, at a sort of, in terms of your revenue, what's the challenge? What does that perishability also mean in addition to what you'd said? Imagine your marketing team has a hotel with 200 rooms, okay? And they need to fill those 200 rooms, pretty much all the time to get their occupancy up. Okay, what's the difference between that and selling bikes? Perishability. No? So, let's imagine it's Wednesday. Okay? It is Wednesday, right? So, it's Wednesday morning, okay? You're at the hotel. You can see you've got 30 rooms that are empty in your hotel in London. You can see then you're working for Cannondale Bikes. You can see that in your stock room, wherever you keep your bikes, you've got 50 bikes that haven't yet been sold. Now it gets to the end of Wednesday, and those 30 rooms are still empty in the hotel. What's the difference? Go.
The empty room cannot be stored and last a long time.
You got it. I knew I'd get there. I had to just push you a little bit with the example. But listen, guys, we're all in a very safe space here, right? I'm not going to judge you, honestly. If you say nothing, I'm not going to judge you. But if you say something, I'm not going to judge you if it's not so-called the right answer. And I say so-called because there'll be elements of what you say that probably will be getting towards the truth, but may not be exactly there. Like you gave an answer which was, I'd say, 70% of the way there, but it didn't really talk about storing the product. So just feel free to, when I ask you questions, feel free to engage in the classroom, because I think it's really important for you. I'm not giving you a lecture. I'm not telling you what to do. Listen, I can stand here and just give my lecture, and that's fine. And I'm happy to do that. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I would say that actually, for me, my opinion personally is, if you're a student, it's partly about what you learn, theory, but you'll forget a lot of that. Let's be honest. You probably forget quite a bit of it the moment you leave the room, unless you revise it. You'll certainly forget a lot of it after the course is finished. What might stay with you, though, for longer is your confidence, your communication skills, your curiosity, your ability to challenge me and say, well, Philip, that's okay, but actually, I think, maybe Cannondale have a tough job as well as Hilton. Oh yeah, great. Why do you think that? So do you see what I'm saying here? Don't just be a passive recipient of knowledge. Get onto the front foot, question, ask, This is increasingly what employers will look for from you, whether you stay in the UK or go back to to your respective countries. It's be the same. That's what people are looking for. So I'm just giving you a bit of advice. That's all. I'm not. It's completely your choice at the end of the day. But you're right. You're absolutely right. You're spot on. You can't. Hilton can't store those 30 rooms and sell them. Cannondale can. Now, it's of course not going to be quite as simple as that. Cannondale still need to generate cash flow. They don't want to be leaving a bunch of bikes unsold because, again, the bikes, very often the bikes can get dated. New technology comes along. A competitor comes with a better bike. All the time you're competing, right? So I'm not saying it's like easy for the Cannondale marketing team, and it's that's not the case. But perishability is unique to services like hotels, like airlines, like cruise ships, rail operators, Eurostar going out of London, all of that. That's all something that cannot be stored for future sale. All right, so that's the product. Place can be the actual place where I deliver the service, in the coffee shop, in the lecture theatre, like now. But it can also be what's called distribution channels. Can you guys give me an example of one distribution channel that Hilton or Cannondale or any company you can think of use? What is a distribution channel? Could you give me an example? What does that actually mean, a distribution channel?
So I think, for example, for like a kind of chocolate, so like Cadbury, you can buy directly from them,
Right.
or you can, or they also distribute to other retailer like Tesco, or same.
Did you say Cadbury is the chocolate?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So you've got what's called the DTC, direct to consumer model, which is what you're saying, like e-commerce, selling through Amazon or through your website. We looked at the Cannondale website there. I'm sure you can buy a bike on their website, but you can also buy one of their bikes or the chocolate through a third-party retailer. Okay, so that might be a specialist shop that sells mountain bikes, and they might sell Cannondale, but they'll also sell other brands of mountain bikes. Just like if I go to Waitrose or Tesco, they'll sell other brands of chocolate, right? Not just Cadbury's. So distribution channels are basically how we get the product, or it could be a service as well, how we get the product or the service to the customer. For example, if it was a bank selling, say for example, I bank with Nationwide, and they message me a new financial product, a new savings like account or something, then that is also what's called a distribution channel. So there's multiple distribution channels that a company, whether it's a product or a service or both, can use to reach their customers. And again, it would be interesting, and I'm just thinking now about a little exercise that you guys can maybe prepare for a future week. I'll need to give it a bit more thought, but I'd like to sort of, I guess, kind of give you a task where you're going to look at a brand and start thinking about its services marketing mix, maybe it's CRM, and actually then come back maybe in the lecture, with a bit of discussion, tell us a little bit about what you found, what your analysis has told you, and you can share that. Because I think otherwise, because we're not having seminars with this module, we need to build in a bit more interactivity where you're kind of involved in a bit of the work. Yeah, absolutely. So it can be physical or digital. Okay. People, obviously, we know that people are key to services marketing, building relationships, organizational culture. Okay, that's super important that we create the right culture for the organization where your employees can really identify with what it is you're trying to sell. Price, okay, so we can have, for example, dynamic pricing. You get that with airlines. So if you go on, let's say, for example, you're going to fly from London to Shanghai, and you check out the flight with British Airways today, that will be different than the price you would pay in 3 months' time. Let's say you were flying in August. That's called dynamic pricing. You think about it, that doesn't apply to most things we buy. Like Costa Coffee doesn't use dynamic pricing. Like if I go and buy a latte today, it'll be the same price as one, more or less in a month's time, right? So dynamic pricing is unique in many ways to the kind of travel and tourism sector. I don't know, there was a big controversy. I don't know if you know the band Oasis. Maybe you've heard them, they're like a British, too young. They're quite a famous UK band, two brothers, in a band called Oasis. They're huge, but obviously you haven't heard of them. And they came together again as a band and were having like a world tour going around cities playing. And they started in Manchester, where they're from. And I don't know who made the decision, but somebody, maybe the promotion company for the band, made the decision they would use dynamic pricing. So different fans were paying different prices, and it completely backfired. There was a huge backlash, scandal. It was even in the main media, and the two brothers who are in the band had to apologize. It was a PR disaster. I mean, their tour was still incredibly successful, but just shows you've got to be really careful with how you particularly in social media, and then suddenly it becomes something that will damage your brand very, very quickly. But anyway, that's what dynamic pricing is. You can have price bundles where you include a number of things. You can have this idea of freemium pricing. Have you come across that concept? Freemium. Freemium is the word free combined with the word premium, right? Just so you know. So, for example, if you sign up for something, you get a free trial, or you can have a free version, but they will try to upsell you to the premium package. So, for example, on my phone, I have an app called Strava. So it looks like that, right? And it's basically, if you are running or cycling or doing different sports, you can track your speed, your distance, how much elevation, whatever. And however, if you want to get some of the nice features on the app, like maybe how many calories you were burning on the run, you have to sign up for the premium version, which will cost you £9.99 per month. That's called freemium, right? So you get something for free, but if you want the really good features, you've got to go up to the premium. So that's a pricing technique, okay? Promotion could be storytelling, okay? And there are some companies that are very good at telling their kind of brand story, or they might even get customers to tell their story of using the brand, right? Like take the Cannondale example there. If I was in the marketing team for Cannondale, I might ask maybe, say, a dozen riders who've bought Cannondale bikes to, take a camera with them, like a GoPro camera. Maybe they're out riding for the day. I want them to document their ride, tell their story. What was the feeling like? How was the bike? All that. Then you have these stories, right? And if they are customer stories, then they can be quite powerful in convincing other people to buy the experience, right? Because in some ways, Cannondale marketing team are selling an experience. They're not just selling a bike. So think about that word experience. And also, of course, with promotion, we have to build trust. We have to build awareness. And we don't want to damage that trust. Almost every day or every week, you hear a story about a brand that maybe got it wrong, like what I've just given an example of, Oasis, the group, the music group. They what's the word I'm looking for? They kind of maybe lost the trust a little bit of their fans. because they were maybe seen to be trying to make too much money. Okay, and they're already very wealthy, and yet they want to make more money off the back of their followers, their fans, and some people won't like that. So trust is important. You think about, I don't know, think about football, or if you want to use the American word, soccer. Think about football teams like Manchester United, Chelsea, Arsenal. I don't know if you know anything about football in this country. They're probably arguably one of the brands that have the highest trust and emotional following of their fans. Okay, because it's almost like a religion for some football fans, right? So therefore, that's a high level of trust. But nevertheless, you can still damage that trust if you do the wrong thing and seen the wrong way, right? So that's promotion. Physical evidence. We talked about the service-scape. We talked about the physical stuff, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I don't need to say anything more about that. Just a quick kind of overview. These stats are also from the book. Excuse me. So in some ways, I like this idea that value is no longer just made, it's performed, right? So sometimes it's kind of a performance. Like if sticking with the hotel industry or restaurants or anything like that, it is in some ways a performance. And when you talk about service blueprints, which is a big feature in the book and a big part of services marketing, service blueprints talk about the front stage and the backstage. So what's the difference? What do you think that means? Well, why do we talk about the front stage? Like, for example, if we talk about a hotel, who or what would be on the front stage and who or what would be in the backstage? Okay, or think about a theatre, right? If you've been to the theatre recently or at all, and you've seen a play, right? The actors are on the stage, aren't they? You're watching them, they're front stage, you see them. But what's happening backstage? And why is that important? Thoughts? Could be a coffee shop, a restaurant, a hotel, anything. Who do we see in the front stage, and who do we not see? What's happening backstage? Do you think that also affects the customer's experience?
For example, in hotel, the customer will see the reception staff in the front page.
Yeah.
And then the back side, the staff who's control, like, for example, AC or like some technician things.
Yeah.
Or it could be like marketing or like financial management things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So great. So in a hotel, at the reception, when we check in, go through the lobby, front stage, we see the receptionist, and he or she will greet us, and might greet us personally. Hi Philip, or hi Mr. Alford, or whatever it is. Welcome back. Nice to see you again. Blah blah blah. Okay, that's front stage. But that her ability to say to me, "Oh, welcome back, Philip." How is she able to know who I am? What's happening backstage that's telling her that she can welcome me by my first name?
So if the consumer visit is a second time visit, most people has the customer data in the online, so the backstage they're gonna give their information about the consumer too.
Right. Exactly. Great. So front stage, backstage, right? You've got it. So front stage reception. Let's assume it's a lady. She can deliver the service she's delivering because the processes and the information backstage are enabling her to do that. Okay? And if she gives me the room key and I go up the elevator and I tap the room key on to scan in and it doesn't work, some technological process backstage has now affected what's happening front stage in a negative way. It's not the fault of the receptionist, but the guest will probably come back down again and maybe complain. Depends what kind of mood they're in. If they're happy and relaxed, they'll go, hey, it doesn't matter, no worry, no problem. Things happen. Takes another key, goes up, everybody's happy. But they could be having a bad day, right? Or they're in a hurry for a meeting, and then it's a different story. They're annoyed, they're angry, they come back down, this is ridiculous, like blah, 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 right? And then what happens? That affects the receptionist, right? It's a negative experience for her. So next time the next guest comes in, she's got to pick herself up again and put on a smile, even though somebody's just been shouting at her, right? Do you see what's going on here? So front stage, backstage. So think when you are, what's the word I want to use, consuming or experiencing a service next time, ask yourself, what do you think's going on backstage to enable you to have that excellent experience front stage? What do you think's going on behind the stage? And behind the stage is not just people doing stuff. It's also technology, it's processes, it's policies, it's HR training. Okay, it's all of those things. You mentioned finance, you're right. It's the finance people as well behind the scenes. So there's a lot of backstage happening that enables the front stage performance. Think about a theater. Think about a music concert. Think about all the people who are doing the lighting, the speakers that the music comes out through, maybe the smoke that comes up on the stage, all the special effects. That's all backstage. That makes the front stage a fantastic performance. Okay? And that's exactly what we're talking about here, wherever it is. So we know that we've got these kind of hurdles of service: intangible, heterogeneous, inseparable, and perishable. I am not going to go through all these four again, right? Because we've done this. However, when I asked you earlier about perishability, it took quite a while to get to the answer. So it's one thing, Karen and I telling you stuff, and it's another thing you actually, remembering it, but more importantly, being able to put it in your own words and answer a question. There's a difference. Okay, so I have to move on because otherwise I won't. But that doesn't mean that you've necessarily got all of it. That's why I'm thinking I'd like to give you an interesting task to prepare and to do maybe in class, not to kind of test you or make you uncomfortable, but just to make the learning a little bit more active and a bit more real. So the traditional 4 Ps are still very relevant in services marketing. And again, you know what those 4 Ps are by now. This is really basic marketing. But we need to expand that. And again, you know this as well. This is like bread and butter to the services marketing. Sorry, bread and butter means basic knowledge, basic information. Don't know why it's called bread and butter. There you go. So that we expand with 3 other Ps. People, physical, right? People, we know about that. Physical evidence, servicescape, we know about that. And processes, right? And we know about that too. You think about organizations like Pret a Manger, Costa Coffee, Starbucks. McDonald's, they have to run on processes. They're global companies, or at least McDonald's is, right? They have to have replicable, that means processes you can just repeat all the time, and they put them in place. And that's what makes them economical and competitive and profitable. So we know that if we want to think about a theatre production, that your people are like the actors in your play, the cast, right? And they are the service. And in many ways, their behavior defines the quality of the product. And customers are also co-creators. Okay? There's an example here that I'm just going to share with you from. See, more cookies. TomTom is a kind of like sat nav system, right? Technical sat nav system. I don't know how popular they are now because of Google Maps and smartphones, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. There's many examples of companies that do this. You know, they've set up this consumer forum. That's where consumers support other people with problems. A bit like Reddit. If you ever use the Reddit threads. This is a good example of where you can leverage your own customer base to support other customers. Another example is this. Oh, sorry. I really find it hard to type standing up. There we go. This is an e-commerce company headquartered, I think, in Paris, in France. And yeah, basically, yeah. So you can set up like an e-commerce site on their web. You can see all the examples here. You're in control. And yeah, this is the bit I wanted to say. Feel empowered by your community or our community. So PrestaShop very effectively use they've created a community effectively, which are kind of mutually supportive. So if you have a problem building your website, or you're looking for like cool ideas for your website, or you're like you want to try some new coding or embed AI in your website, whatever it is, you can reach out to the community, not directly to the company, but to the community, and they will help you to co-create what you're trying to achieve or solve the problems. So this is an example of where we can create a community around our brand and leverage that community for co-creation and, improving the service. So that's quite I think a good sort of practical example of what that looks like. Get back onto my view here. So that's co-creators, right? And again, we hear a lot about this word co-creation. Sometimes it's a bit overused, but think again about, I keep asking you this, but you're also consumers of services. Think, is there a co-creation element going on? Right? What do you think is the co-creation element to this lecture? How does co-creation happen here? Engagement. What does that mean, engagement? So when I ask a question, lots of people all over here, even all these guys over here, look up in the back right-hand corner, all looking at the screens because they don't want to catch my eye in case I ask them an awkward question. Guys, what's co-creation, right? So it's you kind of looking at me, smiling, going, I'm having a great time in your lecture, Philip. Yeah, I've got an answer to your question. And by the way, the other day I was, looking at my new banking service, whatever, and this happened. What do you think? That's co-creation. So we co-create the experience in the lecture theatre, right? If you say nothing, do nothing, contribute nothing, engage nothing, it's one. That's not co-creation, it's just delivery. That's all it is, just delivery. And that's a second-rate thing. So what happens when we co-create? It's interesting. The whole dynamic changes, right? Changes for me as a lecturer because you're feeding back. So I get a sense that you understand the topic and you can not just write something down on your laptop or write something on your iPad, but you can actually say it back to me in your own words, which for me is a higher level of understanding. Okay, that's one. Secondly, if this lovely chap, right, sitting up to the back right-hand corner there, wearing a nice black jacket, he's still not looking at me, smiling there, right? If he says something to me about an experience that you've had, right, the other day with your banking service, could be a fantastic example. Suddenly, the other students are not just learning from me, they're actually going to learn from you because you're putting something into the mix, which is a new idea. I didn't think about it, like you talked about achievement. I didn't think about that. That's a great point. You've now just enriched the lecture through your contribution. So that's co-creation, okay? So it's peer-to-peer, which means student to student, as well as lecture to student and student to lecture. That's co-creation in this setting that we're in. And that applies to pretty much every service setting, whether you go to the hospital, go to see your doctor, take your dog to the vet, go to your bank, whatever. Okay, so let's take a break. It's just gone 2 o'clock, and we'll start again at 10 past. I do need to finish at 1:45 on the button and leave because I've got a train to catch. But yeah, so 10 minutes, guys, and relax. Think about how you can co-create.
Much better than I think. Oh, really? Yeah, I tried quite a lot of stuff, but I just think it's too messy. And I know what it is. I tried, I did got it ready. So I know what it is. Yeah, so even I tried a lot of it. Okay. But it's not it's okay now, so I and one of the persons just said because it was really asking if that's okay. Not intentionally to her. And then when we're trying to get to I feel such a I make not one person, and I just said this to it.
Yeah, okay, yes. This is I want to I don't know what you to me. I'm the main
Okay, so well, let's get on. As I say, I've got to be away sharp at 1:45, so gives us about just about half an hour. Okay, so continuing on this slide deck for services marketing, we know by now that given the inseparability element of services, that recruitment is in effect a marketing function. Okay, and we have to make sure that that when we recruit people, they are people who have a good fit with our product, as you can see here. Okay, because they are the kind of obviously the skill or the face of the customer. And if you look at some, for example, if you look at Pret a Manger, the coffee shop that's not far from us here, and their kind of recruitment process, they spend a lot of time in trialing or giving an experiment with the employee to see if they fit. Very often, other employees will have a say on the recruitment of somebody. So there's a lot of focus given to the importance of the employee. So when we recruit for our service organization, whether that's not for profit, like a hospital, or whether it's a profit, like a hotel or an airline, we need to give careful thought to, are these people a good fit for our product? And actually, you need to be thinking as well, are they a good fit for our value proposition? So, for example, if you're going to recruit somebody at Cannondale Mountain Bikes, does that person have an affinity with the brand? Do they feel the brand? Do they identify with the brand? Are they kind of outdoorsy people themselves? Are they into sports? Are they into activity and fitness? And do they identify with the kind of Cannondale value proposition? And so that would be important. So say, for example, you were going to go for a job with Cannondale and you happen to have a blog that showed all your favorite mountain bike trails and, all of that, then that would put you in a very strong position for a job at that company, as opposed to somebody who just said they understand the brand but have no evidence. So you want to think about recruitment actually not just being an HR function, human resource, but being a marketing function as well. So training, motivation, culture, etc. And that's the same for business to business as it is for business to consumer, manufacturing, or services. I'm not going to talk about the servicescape anymore. We had a whole session on that. I think that's clear. And that's here what we see. But we need to think also about process. We talked, didn't we, about backstage and front stage. We talked about how the processes in the backstage enable the performance on the front stage. Okay, so we need to think about those processes. Now, those processes will differ, and those service blueprints will differ depending on the positioning of the brand. So again, with hotels, if it's like the Ritz Hotel in London, which is kind of 5-star luxury, high price point, that's very high touch. The backstage processes there will be significantly different than a self-service type hotel, maybe costing you £150 for the night, as opposed to maybe £600, £700, £800 at the Ritz, or a similar type of hotel. So we talk about blueprints. Just in case I forget to say this earlier, I think Karen actually has uploaded some useful blueprints into Blackboard. So again, this is in this is in next week's Blackboard folder. So I'm jumping ahead a wee bit here, so that doesn't confuse you. But I just thought I'd bring it up because I was talking about blueprints. I thought, well, actually, there's one here. It'd be silly not to show you an example. So this is the example that's on Blackboard. You can see the backstage includes, like, for example, the physical evidence, right? But also, well, that's kind of front stage, actually, because that's what the customer sees. So sorry, that's not backstage. So the website, elevators, the menu, whatever, all the other stuff along the top, that's everything that the customer can see on the front stage. And then you've got these customer actions. What's the journey of the customer all the way from reservation to checkout? Multiple touch points in the yellow. And then we've got both front stage and backstage, visible and invisible employee actions, right? So, for example, greet, take bags, process the registration, deliver the bags, deliver food for, like, I don't know, for room service, whatever, checkout. But then backstage, and you've got this line of visibility, what the customer doesn't see is making the reservation, maybe the concierge or the whoever they are taking the bags to the room, people taking the food order. I think there's a lot more stuff going on, but we could add a lot more to this actually, right? What about the loyalty program? I would put that in here as backstage, being able to see the profile of the customer. Maybe I want to see the fact that maybe I can see that they made a complaint last week. I need to make sure that this time they're very happy and there's no complaints and all the rest of it. So again, what we could relatively easily do as a marketing team is we could probably start on that whiteboard or like a huge big, a huge big board like this, right? Put it here. And we could start to map out the blueprint here. We could take any service, like you could even take a service that you've experienced like yesterday or the day before, and you could just map the blueprint. Because what it is, it's kind of like mapping the blueprint. You can maybe have your line across here in the middle, which is your line of visibility. Everything up here is front stage, and everything down here is backstage. You could then start saying, okay, I'm going to start thinking about the last time I bought a service. What were all the touch points? What were all the yellow points in my journey? Okay? Then you could easily start to draw lines up saying, well, in order for me to have that experience, that touch point, they needed to know this or do something backstage. You'd be surprised, before you know it, even with a very simple thing like going for a coffee in Starbucks or something, you might get quite a complicated blueprint. Why would you do that? Well, you would do that to understand how you can deliver an excellent performance for the customer. But also, if I was doing this in a company, I wouldn't only do it with the marketing team. What other internal functions within the company might I want to involve in this mapping exercise, and why? So would it just be the marketing team drawing up the blueprint, or would you want to bring anybody else from the company into that exercise? Think about what we've been talking about this afternoon. Why might I want to bring in, say, the HR director or the technology director? Why? Why are they relevant? Think about what's happening front stage, but also think about what's happening backstage, particularly what's happening backstage. Why then, if you think about the backstage processes, why would you want to invite your HR team or your technology team? Why would you want to have them in the room doing this? Let's co-create. Any thoughts? So we know that like processes in the backstage will affect the customer journey on the front stage. Now, as a marketing team, you might think, well, the only people who really matter is what happens on the front stage, right? It's all about the customer, and it is. But why is backstage important, and why might that mean bringing in other departments in your company?
So I think for the technology teams, because they are the person who get involved directly with the app or the technology. For example, if they have any like update or any problem, or because normally if the customer have any problem with their technology, they can raise it, and I think it's better for the technology team know about those things, so they can get involved with the process.
Absolutely, right. So good, great answer. So, the people who maybe you have an app, okay? So, okay, let's think about Starbucks just at the top of my head. There's a Starbucks app. Well, the Costa Coffee, I have the Costa app, right? It's simple, quite simple to use, whatever. But it's one of the touch points on my journey, isn't it? If you look about those, if I arrive at Costa Coffee, and I order, a flat white, I'll scan the app. Oh, I've got a free drink. Happy days. I'll get a free flat white. Okay, and there might be something, on the app that I like or don't like, or I might have a bit of confusion. I might say to the person behind the counter who's serving me the coffee, "Oh, I don't understand this," and say a bunch of people say that. So, what this does, this blueprinting exercise, it brings everybody in the company together around one key thing: the customer journey. And what it does with your app people, your app development people, your website people, your HR, recruitment, training, all of those people, it basically puts the customer at the center of everything we do. Because oftentimes those people in the backstage never meet the customer. So what they need to do is they need to be in the room talking to people who might be customer facing. So on that, I wouldn't just have the marketing team even. I would have the receptionist join me. I would have the person who cleans the room join me. I would have the person who runs the gym and the hotel join me, because they've all got customer insight. But I may not have all of the people at the same time, otherwise you could have 50 people around the whiteboard. You'd have to divide it up and work it out and all that. But you see what I'm saying here? That is kind of like a creative exercise. So what you want to think about a blueprint as almost being kind of like work in progress. It's really more a way to analyze and think about how your company, how your organization delivers a wonderful performance for the customer. That's what it is. Like in a hospital, I would get the doctors, the nurses, I don't know, the people who do the x-rays. I'm not a medical expert, but I think about, my last visit to the hospital. I had an x-ray actually, and it damaged my finger snowboarding. So, I actually had a fantastic experience, actually all the way through from seeing the nurse who referred me. I got a text message, gave me a number to ring, I booked the x-ray, it was available the same day, went to the hospital, got it x-rayed. Honestly, every step was like almost perfect, which was great. So all my touch points along the top were 10 out of 10. But why were they 10 out of 10? It was partly because of the front stage contact, the nurse, the people doing the x-ray, but it was also what was happening backstage, sending me the text message, me calling, somebody booking me in. When I turned up at the hospital, gave them my date of birth, they were able to identify me immediately, and all the rest of it. And of course, now here we have the NHS app, which they're really trying to build as the kind of customer-facing kind of thing between, citizens and the NHS. So, so you got the NHS app like this, you scan it, all of it's not scanning because my face is in the front of it, but, that's giving me all my appointments, whatever, okay? And that's a really good example of kind of lifetime relationship marketing. Because, if you're here and you're a citizen of the UK, you're going to be making use of the NHS through your life, literally, until you live no more. Right? There's a depressing thought. So, okay. Any questions? So blueprints. Hopefully you can understand now a wee bit about what we mean by blueprints, but importantly, why you do a blueprinting. Like, I've tried to explain to you not just what it is, but why you use it. And I'm trying to give you also things you can take out of the classroom. Because honestly, if you go and work for any firm, any company, any organization, here or elsewhere, doing a blueprinting exercise like this is maybe something they've never done. And if you show them how to do it, but also tell them why they should do it and what they'll learn from it, something you can take directly from your studies into your work. Okay, how are we doing? Making good time here. So, yeah, we know that. We know the triangle. Yep, we know about, don't overpromise and underdeliver, right? We need to underpromise and overdeliver, other way around, right? We need to always exceed people's expectations, right? That's what we need to do. But first of all, we need to know what their expectations are. And that's how we do research. Like any company who doesn't regularly analyze their reviews on Google, social media, wherever, is crazy. Because that is giving you direct access to customers' expectations. And if you don't know what their expectations are, like I booked a long weekend in Dartmoor. We're off for a few days to do a bit of walking and trekking in a beautiful place called Dartmoor in Devon. So check it out. I'll let you know afterwards next week how it went. I'm staying in a little kind of pub hotel, which looks amazing. So I've got these expectations. I actually sent them an email. They confirmed my reservation. I wanted to check out what walks were available in the region because I like trekking, not just a little walk, but maybe 5-6 hour walk. So I asked them, and they immediately replied within about an hour, saying, "Here's a link, but do ask us when you arrive, and we'll give you more information." Great. So far, all the touch points are positive, right? So my expectations have all been, exceeded, and I hope it continues. Because there's going to be multiple touch points, aren't there? I'll arrive on Friday and taking Friday off, and checking in, the room, the dinner, which I've booked in the pub, whatever. All touch points. Okay, so it's basically, we talked about the performance, right? We talked about this idea of putting a performance on the front stage, supported by the backstage. We are orchestrating an experience. Think about the marketing team as like almost conducting an orchestra, right? You're orchestrating everything across the 7 Ps. Yeah. What are the additional 3 Ps? We've got the 4 standard Ps. What are the 3 extra ones? Quick quiz. People, process. You're nearly there. Yeah, physical evidence. Well done. Right, that's your 7 Ps. So you're kind of orchestrating those 7 Ps and creating a wonderful performance. If you ever go and hear an orchestra, you've got the percussion section, you've got the wind section, you've got the strings, right? You've got the whole orchestra going on, and you've got the conductor who makes sure that the whole thing comes together as a great experience. That's kind of what you're doing. So we need to think about the gaps model again, right? What's the gap between the script and the stage, the service performance gap? We need to be careful that we don't create a gap. Bad recruitment, people not knowing what their role is within the organization. Maybe employees without the right technological training, okay? Like you have the receptionist of the hotel. He needs to know how to use the software to register the guest and connect it to the CRM system, right? So all of that, lack of empowerment. You've got to make your customers feel empowered, right? They've got to take initiative, think outside the box. That's what you want from your customers. Okay, you want your employees who are on the front stage at the sharp end dealing with customers to be empowered to feed back to senior management. Oh, our guests love this, but they hate this, right? There's a company called Radisson Hotels. Radisson, it's like a Scandinavian brand from Norway, Denmark, something like that. Radisson, right? Radisson, I think. They're like a 4-star hotel brand. And they have a little, at least they did anyway, I don't know if it's still there, they had a little kind of staff empowerment thing called Yes, I Can. And all the staff, from the CEO right down to the people cleaning the rooms, had this little badge on their jacket called Yes, I Can. In other words, if, for example, I say to the person cleaning the room, because maybe, he's the first person I encounter, maybe as I'm leaving the room, I say, oh, would you be able to tell me if I can make a reservation at this restaurant tonight at blah, blah, blah. And he goes, that's not my job. I just clean rooms. Go speak to somebody else. How's that going to land? But if he says, yes, I can do that. Leave it with me. Somebody will get back to you. So he then, instead of immediately cleaning the room, calls the concierge and says, the guy in room 367, he wants to book a hotel, blah, 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 blah. Can you contact him? Right? So you get the idea, empowering your staff at every level. Okay, so, and this is quite a good example. Do you remember I was saying last week that we shouldn't always think about B2C, like coffee shops, hotels, airlines, but we need to also think about business to business, right? Services also very much applies there. I'm sure you've heard of Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce are kind of known for their fancy cars, but actually Rolls-Royce are one of their biggest, profit centers is aircraft engines, engineering, providing maintenance and selling aircraft engines to airlines like British Airways and all around the world. And I won't look at the website now, but you can Google this yourself. It's quite interesting. Rolls-Royce have a product called Total Care, where they don't just manufacture the engines, they will service the engines and maintain the engines and give the airlines critical technical information about the performance of the engines, on a regular basis. In other words, it's an example of a manufacturing company that manufactures a tangible product, also providing a service, but it's in a B2B setting, okay? But the same thing applies, even though the value of this will be a lot higher than selling a cup of coffee or checking into a hotel. With a big airline, Rolls-Royce would probably be into millions and millions of pounds in revenue. So, but the service element still applies, right? Understanding what it is your customer wants, understanding the blueprint, the service process, the technical skills that are needed, and so on. IoT stands for Internet of Things. These are sensors that will monitor the health of the engines while in flight, right? So you think about it, for an airline, the takeoff is when they burn most fuel. That's very expensive and not great for the environment either, come to think of it. So whatever Rolls-Royce can do to enable the aircraft to take off in a more fuel efficient way, they are going to save that airline many, many pounds, many dollars of revenue, okay? Costs, I should say, sorry. And also safety as well, which is massive, of course, for the airline industry as well. So what I'm saying is also look at, I mean, I'll give you some in the lecture, but any examples you find online, and again, this could be part of the task I give you. Maybe we divide the class, half the class look at B2C and half the class look at B2B. I can give you specific examples to research, but it'd be super interesting for you to look at some B2B. Did I mention the hovercraft company to you? That's another great example. In Southampton, there's a company, world-class company, who makes hovercraft. And I told you about their decision not only to make hovercraft, but to help shipyards around the world make better hovercraft or other boats themselves. So sending out their engineers to Japan, to India, to China, wherever, and consult on how to make better hovercraft or other vessels. That's a good example as well of a manufactured company doing a pivot. Remember I talked about the pivot, where you kind of turn from one thing and do another thing as well. And what that's done, it's provided this company with a very, very good extra revenue stream. Okay. We talked about service blueprints, no need to do any more. We actually talked about crowdsourcing earlier when I talked about the TomTom SatNav systems. I think this is giffgaff, like a mobile telephone communications network. Again, you can see the co-creation happening here, customer problems being dealt with by other customers, and so on. So again, this is about building the community around your service. So your cast, right? Your people, your partners, your collaborators, they are the service, they are the brand, they are the marketeers. Not just you, but your partners. Remember the ecosystem? Okay? The ecosystem you operate in, your partners, your supply chain, they're all part of the experience. So, we need to think about, obviously employee satisfaction's absolutely key. We've talked about that as well. I think this is a good example where Pret a Manger, I mentioned them already, they put their, they've kind of flipped the pyramid where the CEO is not the top dog anymore. He or she is kind of been relegated to the bottom. They're still pretty important, obviously, but it's all about customers. It's also about frontline employees, and not so much about the people earning the biggest salary in the company. So, and Pret a Manger, in terms of their recruitment policy, you could have a look at that. Just Google Pret a Manger recruitment policy. They'll give you. It's quite interesting how they actually go about their customer or staff recruitment. So the customer we know is a co-creator. I think IKEA is a great example of that, right? And I'm sure you've been to IKEA in West Quay, some of you or all of you. Very popular brand, particularly among students as well, for obvious reasons. But obviously customers get very much involved in the assembly of the whole thing. IKEA are also very good at engaging with customers to get ideas for new products and new services. I mean, IKEA is a great example to go to and look at the service blueprint. The customer journey. So the idea is that obviously if your customers help to create something, right, they're more likely to value it more. They've got what we call skin in the game. They're involved, right? That means they're going to more highly value it. Okay, so when we talk about, self-service technologies, like for example, you can see here where everything's on your phone. When you check into the hotel, there's hardly any employees. I don't know if you've had that experience. I've stayed in a hotel in London a bit like that, where there's maybe one person on the desk, that's it. And you don't really meet many other employees. It's very much about self-service. So you've got to be a little bit careful though, because if you over-rely on technology and there's no human recovery, right? There's nobody you can reach out to say, the app doesn't work, my key doesn't work, the coffee machine doesn't work, help, help, help. There's no one there. yeah, and you've got a problem. So if you're going to go down this road, you need to make sure that the backstage processes are there. So as we know, it's about managing the mix, the marketing mix. We want to close that gap. We've talked about that as well between delivery and experience. And we also talked about the marketeer managing this ecosystem of relationships. I think that's really important. Further reading, and that's it, folks. So for next week, I will kind of put a little bit of thought together, and I'll need it. I think I'm pretty sure it's me teaching you next Wednesday rather than Karen. And I kind of like this idea of giving you something to work on a wee bit. It won't be like a very complicated thing involving hours and hours of prep, but just something to get a bit of engagement. Thank you.
Good afternoon, folks. This is your guard speaking. To welcome you aboard this 1524 service from Southampton Central to Weymouth. Today, this whole train, all 10 coaches, will be calling at Brockenhurst, New Milton, Christchurch, Folkestone, and Bournemouth, where this train then divides, with only coaches 1 to 5 going on to Poole, Hamworthy, Holton Heath, Wareham, Walmorton, Dorchester South, Upway, and Weymouth. Coaches 6 to 10, that is the rear 5 coaches you'll want if you're going to Branksome or Parkstone. Additionally, we do have some short platforms coming up. If you get to New Milton, you will want to be in coaches 1 to 5. If you get to Christchurch, coaches 1 to 7. And for Folkestone, coaches 1 to 9. There are safety notices in all coaches, and please keep your possessions with you at all times. If you see anything suspicious, please come and tell me, or any other member of railway staff. If you need any assistance at all, I'm currently located in the very middle of this 10-coach train. Hope you have a pleasant journey with us today. Our next stop, is Brockenhurst.